Okay, I'm assuming they just
Thursday,
forgot to,
yeah.
oh, there you
Well,
go.
I got look sometime in July. I'm probably gonna miss something in July.
I might miss my swearing.
Okay, we are on the air,
Right.
and it's after 5:30, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. I don't think we got Brandy's not gonna be here, Rashard's not gonna be here,
There.
and Bruce. Okay, well, there's only one item on the agenda, so we'll go ahead and get started. Do I need, since this is different than a committee meeting, okay. Discussion regarding a resolution to formalize the process to fill vacant council seats. And we have our legal staff here.
Okay, so if you were at Oversight Committee last month, I think, this is a bit of a repeat, but we've been talking about this. It was something that was considered by the Charter Review Committee. Ultimately, they just proposed some cleanup language be added to Section 22 of Article 2, and council directed that we move forward with doing something, a resolution that would sort of set out a process for filling council vacancies. As you all know, and Councilmember Holman, I know you've lived it, we've had a variety of processes over the years, even going down to drawing a name out of a hat. More recently, with our many vacancies, we have council has appointed a committee of residents from the ward that was vacated, and then they've sort of developed their own process, each selection committee has, and sent a name forward to council, and for the most part, that's worked really well.
I would say the both times that the council has done the whole thing ourselves, it ended up with a name being drawn out of the hat.
Right.
Because with only 8 members left, it ended up being 4-4.
Right, and it's very uncomfortable.
Nobody wanted to be like,
Nobody wants to be
The
the bad
one
guy, yeah. It's hard, and it really makes sense to have a committee made up of ward residents, because those are the people that would be voting for that person anyway. So what the committee has discussed is appointing a 5-member selection committee, including information on the application to talk about, or to ask about voting history, your city-specific activities and service, and potential conflicts. Prior oversight committees have talked about limiting the number of interviews. Some committees have interviewed everybody that applied, some picked the top 3 or 4. What came through both in 2021 and 2022 was we want one name. Just forward one name. Pick one person and send that forward to council. So what this resolution has is that process outlined. And I put some timelines in here because the charter requires that if you don't appoint someone to fill the vacancy within 60 days, you have to call a special election. So this has to move pretty quickly. So within 5 days of learning of a council vacancy, the city manager will make sure the application for the ad hoc selection committee position and the city council application is posted to the city's website. That 5 nominations from the mayor for the ad hoc selection committee will be placed on the next available council meeting agenda. The committee will get appointed, then staff will work with the members of the committee to schedule a meeting as soon as possible, review the process to be followed, consider whether they want to add any ward-specific questions to ask of the applicants, to review the applications, to determine who to interview, and to select an interview date. And then that meeting would happen where they do the interviews all in one meeting, so it won't be spread out over several days, leaving time for deliberation and the selection of an applicant to forward to city council for its consideration. I also provided an updated form, and I think we updated this maybe when Councilmember Schuler applied. We had added a question that said, have you voted in previous municipal elections? We have a spot for municipal and civic activities. And then I added a question in here, which came up, I think, in the more recent council oversight committee meeting. Explain whether you intend to run for the office for which you are applying at the next election and why. The committee, I think what the oversight committee discussed is the committee can make of that answer what they will. You don't have to be committed to run. But it is important information to get an idea of whether or not someone's really wanting to be in it for the long haul. And then we have a question of do you have any direct or indirect financial or economic interest in any business or other undertaking coming before council? So the committee will kind of know, are you conflicted in such a way that you'd be cut out of a lot of votes, or would you be able to still participate for the most part, that kind of thing. So with that, if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If you want to add any other items, I can do that. Otherwise, I'm going to plan to put this on the June 28th agenda next Tuesday, if Brenda will let me.
Okay, so the one part on the application that says, City of Norman Charter requires applicants to be registered voters in the City of Norman for 6 months and reside in the ward which they seek. Don't they also have to be a registered voter in that ward for X amount of time?
No.
They just have
I
to have
thought that's
been.
what the charter was.
We're changing one of the questions for the charter in August, and we'll have to update this form if it passes, but you have to live within the ward for 6 months.
Live within
Yeah.
the ward,
At
but
the
you
time
don't
in
have
which
to
you
have been a
file.
registered voter
Right.
in that ward.
Right.
Okay. I want to make sure that was clear. So I wasn't sure. Okay. Councilmember
Yeah,
Lee, let's go down the line.
just for clarification, this is something that we can get done without it going to charter change, right?
Right.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
Councilmember Schuler?
Just making clarification that the application is slightly different than whenever I applied, which was, so the piece that was updated is, explain whether you intend to run for office for which you're applying, so like that question was not on my application.
Right. Right.
So that's
the new
something
question.
that we added, yeah.
And that's something that every committee I've been a part of has asked of the applicants, but that way it's just on the application from the get-go.
Just wanted to.
Yeah, and then staff will provide the voting history to the committee.
And I would add too that different councils have felt differently about it.
Right.
We appointed somebody one time because they weren't going to run for it. We just needed them to fill in.
Right.
And then there's other times where it was like, I think we should have somebody that wants to do it longer because.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've
So
had
just
people
kinda
say,
circumstances.
I'm going to see how it goes, and if I'm effective, I'm going to run. And I mean, that makes some sense. People, it's not,
That's where Pika.
shouldn't be a disqualifier.
Right. Just to clarify, the committee members also have to fill out an application, right?
Right.
Okay, so
Right,
it's
so-
not just the mayor picking 5 names of
Right,
their
we
choosing.
would have them do our application that we do for boards and commissions.
And they're in that ward.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Councilmember Foreman?
So, Catherine, in situations past, and we've had a couple of different situations when a council member was departing, had they made recommendations to the mayor about, hey, can, these people I think would be great, they're active in the ward, and consider them to be appointed to that committee?
I do think that's happened. If it's an involved council member, we had one who was, and actually never met in this span of vacancies we've had over the last few years. I don't know that he provided input. He was never plugged in long enough to do that, I don't think. But I think others have, certainly if they've been on council for any length of time, that opportunity is
Bria
there.
picked hers when she left. For Scanlon.
Yeah, they had a
No,
committee.
they had a committee.
Well, no, like
The-
she picked the committee.
She
Committee
gave
members,
the
yeah.
names to the mayor, yeah.
Councilmember Hall?
Yeah, so, we've had to, since 2019, we've had to do this 5 different times. And I think we all can agree that pulling a name out of the hat is not, not the best way to move forward. So we
haven't had to do it this year.
Appointed a committee member.
I feel like you need to knock on wood if you're asking
Yeah.
if we
I'm
have a
the last
vacancy.
one.
Yeah.
We're replacing council members
So,
this year for the first time in 4 years.
I think that's really been the intent, at least since 2019, when, the first one up was replacing the Ward 6 seat because Bria had been elected mayor. So, I think we've really hit on what we've all experienced and kind of picked the high points of what we'd like to see in this resolution. So I'm really pleased with, everything that you've put forward so far. And I think, again, it's just kind of to demonstrate good faith to our constituents and those that are experiencing loss of representation for a short period of time. And I think that's the other thing that I hope the charter change, the ballot language, I hope that gets approved because that will clean up a lot of misunderstanding too about how it actually happens. But I think it's safe to say that every time, and the council has changed some since 2019, that the goal was to get someone appointed as quickly as possible, and that there were several times where we absolutely intended to not even use the selection process, but take it straight to the voters as quickly as we could. But because of the limits that we have on election dates and what the purpose of those dates are, we have found ourselves in this position over and over and over again, even when we were perfectly happy to move forward with a special election. So the piece about, the ward representation, we would just, hope that anyone that's sitting in the mayor's seat would understand how important it would be to have 5 people that represented the demographics of that particular ward. And I know, in some cases, a council member has been around to recommend, people that represent a diverse cross-section or specific interests within a ward. And, the council member, when available, and the mayor have, worked on that too. So I think we've improved the application. I think we've definitely hit on the things that we had consensus for through 2 oversight committee meetings. So I think we're moving in the right direction.
We've also been able to get, usually on those committees, we've been able to get like a former council member.
Yes.
Not the one that's outgoing, but like they served 10 years ago or 5 or having that kind of,
Knowledge.
to look at it from that way has been helpful. And then other residents that are interested. Councilmember Schuler?
I was looking back through my notes from oversight and just appreciate the attention to the discussion items that I have written down here of like how many committee members, how the committee members will reside in the ward, and how the interviews will be conducted. And I think there was some discussion on how many members of that committee. I think that having 5 gives an opportunity to provide that mix of representation of the ward. So I'm glad to see that we've settled on a specific number, which I think is helpful. But I also I like here how we're kind of setting out some recommendations and benchmarks of how the committee is going to conduct their interviews and their time, but also allowing for flexibility that creates opportunity for each ward to create questions and understanding that is unique to each ward and their specific challenges, because we know that each ward is special in its own kind of way. And I think that that's really important to be able to allow each ad hoc committee to specialize in whatever way they need to fill their vacancy that's upcoming. And having been the last person to kind of go through it, I do feel like from 2019 through the process, there were lots of growing pains and challenges. And while I wasn't on the council side of it, being a citizen as a resident going through it, I think that it was pretty straightforward to me on how the process was going to move forward, and this is kind of just codifying that process that we've finally kind of nailed down over a several year process. So I think that's really kind of important to.
It just occurred to me that Councilmember Schuler, Councilmember Hall, and Councilmember Steadley, so 3 of 9, a third of our current council went through a process that touched on pieces.
Not Councilmember Studley.
Yeah.
She was.
She came on.
Oh, that's right, she got elected and we
elected.
started her early.
Because of
It
her
was
resignation.
Councilmember
Yeah.
Nash.
Yeah.
She's still not somewhat.
She just started.
Yeah, she got appointed, but
just
at
didn't
least
get
the
to
election
go
had
through
just
the
happened.
She was elected and then appointed
For the
early.
remainder.
Yeah.
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 And then Matt was unopposed 1 year. Yeah, you it. I won twice. To the senior
Anyway.
citizens
Man, I was the only
fund.
person that filed for that seat and then had to wait 6 months.
I know, what a bummer.
Yeah.
Well, we haven't drawn a name out of a hat since 2016.
Thank goodness.
That's progress right there.
Because I think that's terrible
That is
and
not
not
democracy.
democracy at all.
It's really bad when you're the one drawing the name.
Yeah, and
and
as,
then-
as random as you might think it would be, the accusations of, it was
It was
fixed in the hat.
sticky.
You're thinking, how do you fix
Grab the
that?
sticky one.
Oh, and they said, what was the quote? Well, I'm assuming there were 2 names in the hat. I didn't see them.
Brenda put one name down.
Yeah, yeah.
Both. Pieces
Tuck
of
it under
paper.
the rim.
Well,
Yeah.
and then I just, finally, I think that how important it is as someone who has gone through the process to have the residents from your ward be the makeup of the selection committee, allowing for some legitimacy for the council member that is selected to represent that ward without having an election process, provides some kind of foundation to move forward and to be able to have some representation. Because I think we would all like to have special elections to fill and have a full election of the residents to be able to do that. But this seems like a good option for allowing democracy to play out in a smaller capacity than if we're not eligible for an election date from the election board. So
Special election sounds easy, but just the access to a ballot, and it seems to change every year, makes it, I mean, we could have to wait 5 months for a special election, which doesn't seem like a
And it's
good
a-
way to provide
How
representation.
many
Right.
days minimum?
60.
Notification to even have an election, right?
Yeah.
If we want to have an election, got to have 60. It used to be 30, right?
60 to the election, years and years and years ago, yeah.
Yeah, it used to be 30 days, but yeah.
75 if it's a state or, it's on the same date as a state or.
Yeah.
federal
So it's
election.
like you'd have to leave the seat vacant for more than 2 months, and in a 2-year term, that's like a that's a little chunk of the time of just having nobody there. Councilmember Ford.
That was my question, was the 60-day thing, Catherine. Like, what if it's 59 days? When we can't tell the election board, like, there's no wiggle room in that? I mean, that would be a sneaky way for a council member to step up and try to get someone in that they wanted, I guess, but
Yeah.
to.
60 days is hard and fast.
It'd be 60 days after that
60
date
days.
before, like, that'd be the soonest it could be.
Yeah, because
filled.
council's got to
2
adopt the
months.
ordinance calling for the election, then 60.
So really,
Right.
it's like almost 3 months
Could do, yeah.
before an election was held and actually somebody.
Yeah.
Councilmember Hall.
Yeah, and I just thought I'd throw this out there too for anybody that's listening, because it is so much more challenging than you think. It's just, oh, let's just have an election. So in the case of Ward 2, oh my goodness, you know, we had the death of a council member for I think the first time that we're aware of in our history. And then we had a duly elected council member that resigned within weeks after being elected. And we had every intention of having a special election in June. And then we found out, oh, no, this year you can only do an issue election in June. You can't do a candidate election. So I think, you know, the intent is there to get representation for the ward as quickly as we can. And sometimes it's just a lot more challenging than you think. So having this a little bit more consistent and everyone knows what the expectation are, I think is really a good step forward. So.
Yeah, that's why we settled on the February election date, because there was, by state law, there was no other month in the year where we could have our council elections be the same month every year. And we could do it in April, but it would mean runoffs are in June sometimes. So state law is a big reason why we don't just have, why we can't have them with the presidential election, and also because that's only every 4 years. So what good would that do us? But yeah, these limiting of municipal officer elections are the
You know, we talked about, you know, the alternative, well, you guys run your own election. Oh my gosh. The expense, the expertise, the investment in hardware.
Challenges.
That's the only way we can do ranked choice.
And you want to talk about the opportunity for somebody to point a lot of fingers at a lot of people.
Yeah.
I've seen, you know, elections clerks at the county level just get run through the ringer because they didn't order enough ballots, or they didn't order enough ballots in Spanish, or, I mean, and it's just a brutal reality that we love the fact that we have a county elections office. They already have the equipment, they already know how to do this, they already have polling places. We'll follow their rules and send them our language, and
Brenda doesn't want to do that.
there's not enough of Brenda's life left to want to
Yeah.
jump into that arena.
Councilmember Foreman?
Okay, so I have a question. So say it's the mayor. Say Larry comes on and he's like, this is nuts. You people are crazy and I just want to go back into retirement. we don't have language. I mean, it says the mayor's going to, like, if he's outgoing, is he still gonna pick the committee?
It would be the mayor pro tem under our charter,
Okay.
if the mayor's office is vacated.
Okay.
So we have a path.
Okay.
And in that case, Mayor Pro Tem would serve as mayor until an election.
election.
And
Right.
we would have an election, we would try to, committee to pick the mayor.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Oh, man,
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
that's interesting.
yeah,
draw that out, right?
yeah. Well,
Yes, for citywide.
my name has been drawn out of a hat too, but it was at the election board. So if two candidates tie in an election, then the way to break that tie in Cleveland County is,
That is.
I had
Name has to
no
be drawn.
idea.
so that's
Yes,
how,
That's statewide.
when I first ran,
Ty, Linda Lockett?
there were 3 candidates. She got the most votes. She,
Oh.
but she
right,
didn't
for
get
the runoff.
50%.
Uh-huh.
And me and Brandy Kaufman got 89 votes each.
Whoa, watch it.
And the official process was they had to send us a certified letter. We had to go to the election board the next Friday. It was like a week and a half later at 9 a.m. And the media was there, the press and everything. And they had a basket and they
That
drew
is so
our names out and they drew my name out. So I
And
went
that was
into a
Ward
runoff.
7,
Yeah.
89 votes.
Linda Lockett got 164, and Brandy Kaufman and I got 89 each. And so nobody got 50%.
Wow.
And I
then
think
you
Linda
beat her.
needed like 6 more votes, and she would have got 50%. So
Every vote counts.
So-
Every vote
I got
counts.
to the runoff because of my name being drawn out of a hat, and then I ended up losing in the runoff by 21 votes, 127 to 106.
Wow.
So it's even less votes for the runoff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got more votes, so she got less votes, but I was able to improve mine by almost 20. Yeah. So,
Wow.
yeah, I've seen it in the
People gotta vote.
the first one was that I remember was Hallie Zell. He had recently run for mayor. It was before I was on council, but he resigned from council shortly after that. He recommended Robert Castleberry, and that created a little bit of it. They were like, you shouldn't be able to pick who. And anyway, it was Robert and this other guy, a doctor, an older
There were
guy.
several.
And it ended up being between those two in the council, 4-4. 4-4. They did it 3 rounds. And so Brenda drew Robert Castleberry's name out of the hat. So that's how Robert got on. He ended up being on the council for 8 years.
Son of a gun.
And then Chad Williams resigned from Ward 8 and to move to Ohio. And we asked Dan Quinn to come back and just serve until
Yeah.
someone could be elected. But then Kyle Allison was the only person that filed for the seat that year. So Kyle got sworn in a committee meeting over there in that conference room on a Monday night.
Yeah. Wound up having to draw a name from
Yeah, in
Ward
January.
5.
'Cause, and then, we had Ward 5 when Lynn got elected mayor. And that was a whole deal between James Chappell and Sarita Wilson. And we drew James Chappell's name out of the hat.
Yeah.
And then Sarita ran against James, and she won the election the next year.
Oh, that's
Write a book, Steven. Yep.
It's stuff
Clint
you couldn't
Williams
make
resigned
up.
early, but Alicia had already been elected, so she just took, she just came on.
I think the virtual council member who's only on for a couple of weeks and then moved out of the country.
Matthew McGarry.
Yeah, never met him in person because we
Never
were
met
in a
Matt
Zoom
either.
because of COVID.
Virtual
I don't even think we really ever saw him sitting in the seat there in
I
a
never
Zoom
met
council
Matt in
meeting
person.
environment. He was there 2 weeks, went to one meeting and disappeared.
That's right.
Yeah,
So, well,
We thought it was
Oh, I
us
did
for a
too,
while, but
in person,
we were running
yeah.
them all.
well, it's a good job opportunity, I guess, especially. Okay, so next steps from here. Is there any further comment from anybody else about this?
I'm gonna bring it to you on the 28th.
That is it? That was fantastic.
30 minutes. Make it happen.
Total quality management, we're making it better.
yes.
One policy at a
I haven't been
time.
sworn in my signature.
Meeting is
and I'm
adjourned
like,
then.
I'm not done.